was impressed with
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Is it afternoon yet? We are getting ready to get started. I am Minister Earley, and this is Robyn Taylor. We will introduce ourselves and introduce our panel, and then we will hop right into the flow of what we're going to be doing today. I'm Minister Earley. I am the assistant pastor at Mount Sinai Baptist Church here in Cleveland, and also serve as the youth and young adult pastor at Mount Calvary in Akron, Ohio. I'm the founder of an organization called It's Not a Moment, It's a Movement, which focuses on the African American community getting out to vote, and also focuses on stop the violence activities and initiatives within our community. I'm happy to be here today to serve as your moderator, and here's Ms. Taylor.
Good morning. My name is Robyn Taylor. I live in Columbus, Ohio. However, I grew up in Cleveland. I work at the Ohio Department of Health out of the Office of Health Policy, which includes the Office of Health Equity. I currently work to address health disparities on the state level, as well as making sure all of our staff are culturally competent and incorporating cultural competency standards within their work. That is a lot of work to do with about 1,290 employees that work for the Ohio Department of Health. I am very much interested in hearing from our esteemed panelists strategies that will help me implement some policies that are effective in increasing diversity at the Ohio Department of Health, not just within the organization, but also within the leadership of the organization. Thank you. I'd like to first do the first introduction. We have to your far right, we have Judge Arthur L. Burnett, Sr. He's a retired Superior Court of the District of Columbia and first African American United States magistrate. Yes. He asked the question, what Black middle-class Americans must do to change America, a vision for the future. The judge is the National Executive Director, National African American Drug Policy Coalition Incorporated. He is a graduate from the Howard University, summa cum laude, with a major in political science and minor in economics. In his junior year, he was elected to Phi Beta Kappa. He graduated from the New York University School of Law and a 6-year college law combination program, receiving his college degree in 1957. And after finishing Howard's 4 years requirements by attending classes in the summers of 1956 and 1957, and receiving his law degree in June 1958 from New York University, graduating in the top 10% of his class, and as a Founders Day Award recipient. He was also Associate Research Editor of his Law Review. Thus, he finished 7 years of college and law school academic studies in 6 years. He was appointed the first African American United States magistrate in June 26, 1969, a position subsequently renamed by Congress as United States Magistrate Judge in the United States, in which capacity he served until December 1975. He then became the legal advisor for the United States Civil Service System, and between 1977 and 1980, he served also as a principal legal advisor to the President of the United States on all civil service and personnel law issues in the United States, and as one of the President's chief representatives in dealing with all bills pending before the U.S. Congress dealing with government reorganization and the federal personnel system.
I will introduce Mr. William Gary. Mr. Gary has 30 years of experience in private and public sector management. His private sector experience includes operation management, human resource management, business development, government relations, and legislative affairs in the industry structure. On July 1st, 2014, Mr. Gary was appointed and joined the Kiowa Community College as the Executive Vice President for Workforce and Economic Development, reporting to Tri-C's President, Dr. Alex Johnson. Prior to joining Tri-C, he served for 14 years as Vice President, of Workforce Development for Northern Virginia Community College, the nation's second largest community college. And before joining NOVA, Mr. Gary served for 8 years as Vice President, Chief Operating Officer for Navcom Systems Incorporated, an aviation, telecommunications, and manufacturing company.
And last but not least, we have Ms. Marsha Mockebee. How do demand industries drive the need for talent development, education shifts, and policy decisions in fostering a city, county's prosperity? In February 2011, Marsha A. Mockebee was unanimously elected President and Chief Executive Officer of the Urban League of Greater Cleveland by the Transition Board of Trustees. She is the first female to hold this position at the Cleveland affiliate. Mockebee served the league in an interim leadership capacity from August 2009 until her permanent appointment in 2011. In this role, Mockebee leads an agenda empowering African Americans to develop and exercise their potential on par with all other Americans through education, research, advocacy, and provision of services. During her 24-year tenure at the League, Mockebee spent 17 years developing effective programs for youth, parents, and community members, several of which have served as national best practice models. Amen. In addition to a portfolio of credible service delivery strategies, Mockebee has also provided leadership as a community convener for many collaborative efforts focused on economic and educational parity. Mockebee's accomplishments have been recognized locally and nationally. And as you see here in the program book, we have since 2010, Mockebee has served on the National Urban League's Education and Jobs Task Force. In February of 2013, she was selected to lead an Equity and Excellence in Education initiative for the state of Ohio. Along with her CEO colleagues from Cincinnati and Columbus, Mockebee is helping to engage statewide advocacy and policy issues affecting education in urban communities. In February 2012, she completed an African American leadership mission to Beijing, China. She was featured in the 7th edition of Who's Who in Black Cleveland as a woman of excellence, and honored by Crain's as one of Cleveland's 2012 Businesswomen of Note. Additional honors include Nguza Saba Award, Ashbury Senior Community Center, Professional Women of the Year, Women of Color Foundation, Woman of Vision, National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Incorporated, a Greater Cleveland chapter, Woman of the Year, National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Club, and National Urban League Outstanding Newcomer, CEO. Most recently, Mockebee was recognized as a 2014 Woman of Power and Influence at the 2014 National Urban League Conference. She is known amongst her National Urban League colleagues as the turnaround strategist. Mockebee serves on many committees and community efforts: Workforce Investment Board for City of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, Executive Committee member of the Construction Diversity and Inclusion Effort for Community Benefits and Construction, Global Cleveland Board member and chair of this African American Initiative, and the list goes on and on and on. We are honored to have you all with us today. We will first bring to the podium Mr. Gary. He's going to come up and share some things with us this morning.
Good afternoon. Good morning, and then good afternoon. First of all, let me say how honored I am to be here this morning to serve on a panel of such distinguished individuals. I've been here now a year in Ohio, and I'm still trying to navigate the challenges and issues that are confronting African Americans here, particularly in the Cleveland and the Northeast Ohio area. But during that year, I've spent an inordinate amount of time trying to understand those issues and to translate those issues into meaningful programs at Tri-C that reflect some of the challenges that we heard this morning. So I've been asked to talk about workforce. What are the workforce disparities, with healthcare being at the core of those disparities? And then what are some of the suggested solutions? There's a reason why we have current unemployment rates today. And so hopefully with the presentation that I have and the comments that you're going to hear from my colleagues here, you'll see the connection. So if I could ask you to help me. What I'd like to do is to start off with giving you a little background about Tri-C, because it's from the platform of Tri-C that we are trying to respond to these healthcare initiatives and how those initiatives translate into meaningful workforce programs that give our folk employment. Okay? I found this picture of Tri-C because when that picture was taken, the population of Tri-C looked much different than it does today. When that picture was taken, there were approximately 3,400 students who formed Tri-C's student body. 90% of that student body were Caucasian, were white. Okay, so there was a reason I put that there. Next slide. Having been founded in 1963, we are the largest, as you know, community college in Ohio. And our programs, degrees, and certificates have expanded. We offer over 600 different programs, certificate programs, and workforce development programs that are designed not only to prepare people for four-year degrees, but to hopefully move folk into meaningful jobs that are in demand now. Here's where our student body comes from. I wanted to share this with you because it's important for me, at least, to understand my audience. And my audience is diversified, but at Tri-C's 4 campuses, 2 of our campuses that have minority students, those campuses are now the majority because the minority is the majority on those campuses. So that gives you a perspective of the audience and the pipeline of individuals that we're looking to prepare for the workforce. Next slide. Here is a student profile. 67% of the students that come to Tri-C come for training in technical jobs. But we have a 35% representation of minority groups. And again, 2 of those campuses with the minority groups, particularly African Americans who represented, are the majority on those campuses. So let me get right into the kinds of things that I'd like to talk about today. I've been researching workforce challenges and issues for the past 15 years. And it's not surprising that even though we've made certain accomplishments when it comes to African Americans, let me read this statement to you. Racial discrimination is illegal in the new millennium. It has even become socially taboo. There are more prominent, powerful, and wealthy African Americans now than any other time in our history. While these advances give legitimate cause for celebration, they have also created treacherous illusions about the actual state of racial equality in the United States. Anecdotal evidence of African American advancements disguises the alarming truth. Racial disparities have never disappeared. In many areas, including education, economics, and health, and now workforce, the inequality still exists. That was important to me in doing this presentation because that's the reality. And as we heard this morning, we still have a long way to go, which is one of the reasons that prompted me to leave Northern Virginia to come here to Tri-C. Let me share a little story with you very briefly. And Marsha has heard this story on numerous occasions. When I decided to come here, I got a call from a search firm indicating that Tri-C was looking to hire an executive vice president. I turned the search firm down because I wasn't interested in moving. I had never been to Cleveland before, had no interest in moving this way. I was working towards going back home to Miami, or my wife is from Montgomery, Alabama. And so when I told her about Cleveland, are there any, sorry, Robyn, I won't say what she said. Keep it clean, Gary, keep it clean. So, after a lot of prayer and a lot of thought, and knowing of Dr. Johnson, and knowing of Tri-C, and knowing of the challenges and issues confronting Northeast Ohio, I decided to accept the offer as Executive Vice President to try to transition our workforce development program into a program that helps African Americans get meaningful, sustainable jobs and wages. So for the past year, and all of the stress and fear that was talked about earlier this morning, and by the way, my hair was darker than yours when I first got here. And so was my mustache, by the way. Here I am. And it's through the support, the encouragement, and the counsel of folk like Marsha Mockebee that we've been able to collectively move the needle in some areas that I'm going to share with you shortly. So that's what motivated me to be here. I didn't come here to sleep. I didn't come here to rest. I came here to make a difference, to join forces with all of you to take this to the next level. Unfortunately, the president of Tri-C has allowed me to do that. And hopefully, you'll see that I've been able to do that as well. And if not, please call me. So, let's talk a little bit about the disparities in employment. I've done a little research, and here's some of the kinds of things that stand out. And I've broken these out into economic indicators, educational indicators, and employment indicators. African Americans face challenges in almost every measure of economic status. While African Americans make up about 13% of the U.S. population, we only own 3% of the assets. The average total net worth of white families is $70,000 compared to $6,000 for African American families. Another source of the tremendous racial disparity in wealth is the racial gap in home ownership, the size of which has doubled in the past decades. African Americans are twice as likely to be unemployed as the average American. The overall unemployment rate of African Americans is 13.2%. That's almost twice the rate of whites. Those African Americans who are employed earn about $13,000 a year less than our white counterparts. This is important to understand. It's data-driven. You can't refute this. This is real. And so part of this discussion about why we have such health disparities and why those health disparities contribute to the current state of African Americans is important to understand. Employment indicators. African American young adult unemployment persists at alarmingly high rates. I don't need to tell you this, but I thought it was important to reinforce it. In May of 2014, just last year, 6.5 years after this Great Depression that we experienced between 2007 and 2010, 18 to 34-year-old African Americans faced a 16.6% unemployment rate, over twice the unemployment rate for whites. Blacks are the last to be hired in a good economy, and when there's a downturn, the first to be released. That's fact. That's what's happening. And the chart on the right depicts this pictorially. The red bar represents black unemployment, the black bar represents white, and the grayish bar represents national average. This is important because when you compare this to education, you find a more compounding effect, and I'd like to share that with you now. 41.6% of African Americans own a home, but almost 64% of whites own their own place. The other thing in my research that I found, there are a lot of systemic and cultural biases that still exist. There's an organization in New York called Young Invincibles, and they did a study of employers and the effect of their review process and getting resumes. And let me read the next statement to you. There were some fictitious resumes that were sent to a group of employers with white-sounding names, Judge. receiving 50% more callbacks for interviews than those with African American sounding names, despite the fact that the resumes and the content of the resumes were the same. I'm telling you, there's some things that we have to address. Place of residence. If you live in a rural, suburban, or center city location, that impacts our employment capability, particularly when those employers are moving out to the suburbs. And guess what? We don't have the transportation to get to those jobs. The situation is further compounded. Higher incarceration rates among African American populations explain some of the gaps. An African American male without a high school diploma has an approximately 70% chance, Marsha, of being imprisoned by his mid-30s. I grew up, born in Harlem, raised in the government projects of Miami, the inner city. Had it not, by the way, a single family member, my mom. My dad and mom divorced when I was 6 living in Harlem. The reason for that divorce was because my dad had 2 diseases. Both were college graduates, but he had 2 diseases: alcoholism and gambling, which then resulted in abuse. With 2 young black males, my mom said enough. So she took us without a dime and moved us to Miami. Her sisters and brothers helped us. I'm sharing this with you because growing up in the inner city of Miami, we were discounted as being successful. In fact, some of our family members even discounted us. Fast forward, we were fortunate enough, my brother and I, to go to Morehouse. We had to work and get scholarship monies. But ironically, my brother returned to Miami after having gone to graduate school and became the first African-American male to run the entire city of Miami as the first African-American black city manager. And but for the grace of God, folks, here I am as the executive vice president of Tri-City. God is good. God is good. Having a felony on one's record makes meaningful employment, especially in a recession, and especially if you are African American, almost impossible. And then low educational attainment. Next slide. I'll go through this very quickly. This slide basically says education is a factor. Skill is a factor for us. And without educational attainment, even when educational attainment is disproportionately in favor of whites with lesser education, we still have a disparity, and we're still impacted by it. Without a doubt, a legacy of racial discrimination across the centuries continues to impact economic disparities. So young African Americans like me, and like some of you, start off behind the 8 ball. So what do we do about it? I still say that academics are the next step, please. I'll try to move. This slide talks about educational attainment. You'll notice that for 25 to 34-year-olds, look at the black men by degrees, by the lack of degrees. That's the percentage of the economic attainment. Educational attainment versus that of white men. And look at it for white women. Next slide. Taking that same data and the comments I made earlier, the predicted probability of employment by educational attainment and by race, the higher your education, the more probability you have for employment. But look at the differences in black men versus white men. If I don't have a high school diploma, I have a 65.3% probability rate to get employment. But white men have an 81% probability. Something's wrong. That's systemic. Next slide. Median income, same situation. The higher the degree and educational attainment, the higher the median income. So, what are we doing and what am I doing? I have restructured all of our workforce development programs at Tri-C for the purpose of community engagement, training and talent development, economic impact, and business solutions. I've done all of our workforce training aimed at getting African Americans in inner cities employment and training and preparing them for workforce opportunities even beyond the 2-year degree. That's strategic. Part of the strategy, and Marsha has been involved in this as well, is identifying which industry sectors drive the economy. If you don't understand that, it's difficult to train people for meaningful, sustainable wage jobs when all you're doing is preparing them for things that don't exist. So we have targeted those industry sectors that we feel are driving. And look up there, it's healthcare. That's the key. So all of our programming now, whether it's a degree or a certification or just-in-time employment opportunities, are designed for what? To make sure that it is inclusive and involves our folk. Here are some of the programs. In the past year, and I've been kind of working pretty hard here, and we have as well, we've taken a look at every single program that we offer to make sure that those programs are aligned with those 6 industry sectors that I talked to you about, to make sure that now our training, our preparation, and our opportunities are available for those, with the thought that once you get trained, that training has to connect with a job. But that's not enough. We've got to also be prepared to offer state-of-the-art training that allows African Americans to get access to some of these high technology, high demand jobs so that they can be a part of the employment process. And no longer can you discriminate and look at a person's last name. You now have to look at the economic preparedness and the workforce preparedness. That's what the bottom line is. And if we can steer it that way economically, employers aren't going to have a choice. Right now, they're crying for people. They're crying for people. I wanted to share this with you because part of our vision and part of our mission has to do with community. We cannot do this alone. I have to partner with folk like Marsha. In fact, there's a reason why Marsha and I meet monthly. Not that I don't enjoy her company, but strategy. How do we work together to make sure that we are not operating in opposition to each other? Community has to be key. And it's not just Marsha. It's other community-based organizations. It's other organizations that attract the same challenges and issues that we're trying to confront. So, one of those things that we discovered was this new technology called 3D additive manufacturing. And when I examined this, this is a new revolutionary manufacturing process. And if we don't begin to prepare our folk, Marsha and Judge, in these areas, we're going to be left out. When these areas are going to be driving the economic well-being of this country. And so, the next slide, if we can do it, and if the sound works, if you can place, I'm trying to hit the camera here. I want to share with you, there you go. All right, it did work. Can we turn it up? I want you to hear that we can get it. I want you to hear this because it's real important. I can't figure out how to.
I'm trying to get the volume up on the computer to play that. It's playing, but you can't hear it. But on the side there.
while he's trying to do that, this is a technology that not only trains people into the latest manufacturing processes, but it creates entrepreneurial opportunities to form your own business. And people now are migrating to this technology to begin their own entrepreneurial initiatives. So it's an alternative pathway for African Americans to get into this state-of-the-art technology, so that when you see the population of individuals that are in this business, hopefully you will now see us. It also introduces us to STEM technologies. So, are we ready? And thank you very much for the help. Okay. You probably can't hear that. No. Okay. While this is still playing, let me tell you how important this is again. This is the first 3D printed car in the world. It took 4 years to design, but only 44 hours to print. 5 years from now, when you see something like this is revolutionizing, and you can almost do anything manufacturing-wise using 3D additive printing. Tri-C introduced the first 3D printing program this past January. Now there's a strategy here. There's a reason why we did that. We want to get our people, African Americans and others, involved in this technology, and Tri-C needs to be at the forefront of it, and we are, both in the state and in the nation. In fact, we had the 3D printed car for about a week at our facilities, and I had a chance to drive it. So I wanted to share that with you. Next.
Is there a YouTube link where they can find that piece?
Yes, there is, and I'll make sure. You've seen it already? Okay, great, okay. So, very briefly, let me move forward. Let me give you some suggestions of things that we've had an opportunity to take a look at. I'm going to talk about the barriers next. Okay. College readiness is a barrier. Our folk lack motivation. Our folk lack confidence, lack familiarity. There are a lot of competing life factors. So, what I'm suggesting is that we take a look at Marsha, we talked about this earlier, providing more funding that supports all of the student activities, particularly in the African American community, and establish mechanisms for doing that K through 12. Last slide. So, I'm asking and suggesting that we ask for direct public and federal funding for programs that are targeted at African American communities where jobs are in demand and people need training. Job training and job placement, wage subsidies for employers so that up to 70% of the minimum wage can be paid for by these funding mechanisms. If we have that kind of a problem, let's use public and federal funds both at the state and federal level to try to address those issues. Next slide. That's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
I just have a real quick question. You say that the housing, that 64 percent, 64,000.
64% home ownership.
Home ownership, is that holding the deed or is just, you know, the mortgage? Do they hold the deed to that or is that just?
I'm looking at it as the deed. If I have a mortgage, if I have a mortgage,
Right,
I own my home.
so 64%.
64%.
Whites own their home, they hold the deed.
That's right.
While
We don't.
we don't at all.
And so that's significant.
Yes, it is.
So when we talk about health, the health of our community, there are a lot of things that contribute to those disparities. It's not just lack of access to health care. It's lack of access to funding. It's lack of access to being not impoverished. All of those things compound our inability to move into the workplace. And not to mention the fact that there's still a lot of systemic discrimination. You know, and I don't know how people view my last name, Gary. But if my last name is something else that is a racially undertoned type of a nomenclature, and you've got 50% of those names being excluded from review, but my resume is the same as someone else who doesn't have that, what are my chances to get access to employment? So how do we work together to disavow ourselves of that kind of a barrier? That's our struggle.
I don't need no mic. Actually, what you were just speaking of, my last name is Solomon.
Solomon?
Solomon. And
Solomon.
I graduated from Cleveland Heights High School, which has a high population of Jewish people. I could get a job without even sight unseen, and then when I would show up, it would be, oh, he's not Jewish, he's him. However, I believe that marketing oneself and having the ability to sell oneself once I get the chance to sit in the chair, it never prevented me from getting a job. But my question is this: job fair for 15 to 25, which is the highest unemployment population for minorities. I never see it. You know, they're always for older adults. You know, people that they think that's ready to be into the workforce by age. I think that somewhere along the line, and I mean, I just want to know your opinion. Sure. Do we need to start having these type of job fairs? And I mean, even if we start them off in middle school, just to give them the experience, resume writing, interview skills, contacts for internships with area businesses. I mean, I just want to know your opinion because I work for the Department of Justice on a program with juvenile court, and we actually use Tri-C's GED program from 2005 to 2008. And I just want to know what your opinion is.
Well, let me answer it two ways. First of all, it depends on the demand. What are employers looking for, and what age groups have more of a readiness to move into the marketplace? So we find that people tend to concentrate between 18 and 34. That's one area. Part of the problem is that we think that we have a ready-made workforce, and we don't. No one thinks about the pipeline. You want to solve an immediate problem using immediate resources when the problem existed and exists back in K through 12. Secondly, job fairs and cultural occupational awareness ought to begin back there. Not when a student graduates from high school trying to decide what they want to be when they grow up. They should have had that exposure way back so that they can begin making choices. And then make the pathway choice whether or not they want to pursue workforce programs that move them directly into the workforce, or they want to become a doctor or a lawyer or a machinist or what have you. It's all about telling the story. It's also all about the college not just doing it, but doing it in concert with our partners and making this a holistic workforce system. Not Tri-C trying to solve the problem on its own, the Earley trying to solve the problem on its own, the ministerial groups trying to solve the problem. It's an integrated approach, a system and not a network. It's a system. So we do job fairs, but we just don't tell the story.
However, and I've been screaming everything that you just said for the last 15 years, and I don't know, I still haven't, you know, I guess nobody's listening.
All right. Well, I'm listening. We're listening. Here's my card.
And we're going to take one more question on this portion here because we have to get to our other two presenters.
Hi, my question is referencing college readiness. And my concern is that we have students who are graduating from high school. They're not only not ready for college, they're not ready for the workforce. So at some point, we have to deal with that issue because it's very easy to deny access when you cannot fill out an application for employment. So I think at some point, you know, that to me, that is the crux of the concern and the thing that we really need to focus a lot of our energies on.
Very quickly, if the high schools will adopt a strategy that every single graduate will not require remediation in math and English, when they adopt that as a pact, then we will begin solving those problems, and the community college won't have to spend a year or 2 years dealing with developmental math and English. Until we do that, until we do it collectively, we're going to always have that problem. So you are right on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I know you want to move forward.
That was a great introduction into our next presenter. One of the things that we were talking about before this even started is looking at funding for school districts to hire students while they're in school to begin to learn those workforce skills and also begin to earn income and become responsible and stewards over the income that they receive. So it was good to hear that presentation. Can we give it up for Mr. Williams? At this time, we're going to have Ms. Marsha Mockebee come. I'm so excited to hear her and all of her great ideas. Let's give it up for Ms. Mockebee.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to come back to some of your questions as I wrap up my presentation because I think I can share some additional input to some of the things that you said and talk to you about what we're doing at the Urban League, and there may be some ways we can connect. I'm very honored to be here, very humbled to be here, and I was just smiling the whole time because William and I did, you know, when I recruited William to do this with me and do this with Ivanka, we did not talk about our presentations. I knew we were all talking about workforce, but what I knew was that I could depend on the researcher to provide the data. So as I was developing my presentation, I said, I don't have to do that part. And I didn't know William was going to go first. So that was all in divine order. So I'm glad he did. So I'll try to catch us up and catch up a little bit of time because I think there's some things that I can move past. So somebody's going to, okay. So the next slide. So what I'm going to do is, these are the objectives. We can skip that. You heard about that already, you know, kind of what we're going to do. So let me go on to the next slide. And this is what the Urban League of Greater Cleveland focuses on: education, workforce, entrepreneurship, housing, and our mission is to empower communities and change lives. And we try to make sure that African Americans and minorities achieve on par with the majority community in a lot of these areas through provision of services, research, advocacy, and so forth. So what I'm going to try to bring, the perspective that I'm going to try to bring to this conversation is how through advocacy and provision of services we can implement in our communities a number of the things that William already talked about and that some of your questions brought concern to. So, wait, go back please, William. I want to talk first though, because this is a really important contextual piece for you all to get. I want to talk about the Great Migration. The Great Migration was really the reason that the Urban League movement was birthed. The Great Migration occurred mainly because mainstream white America went to war. And there was work that was needed in the northern cities, and there was not a supply of workers. So what did folk do? The demand side recruited folks from the south to come to the north to fill the jobs. This is a critical point that I want you all to get, because what this tells you is that in a workforce system, whenever there is a lack of supply, the demand side will go wherever it needs to go to find the talent to fill the jobs. I'm going to keep honing that point and make a connection around that as I continue. So the Urban League movement was born out of that, and the urban leagues were designed because once all these people came to the north, there wasn't enough housing, there was problem getting into education, there was discrimination. Now, it wasn't like the Jim Crow stuff that was going on in the South. Folks weren't getting lynched up here, at least not that you heard about in record numbers, but it was still challenges in being able to integrate into the society. So what happened is folks who migrated began to build their own little communities in cities. So therefore you saw and one of the greatest examples of that is the Harlem Renaissance in New York City. Harlem came about because of the Great Migration. The folks who went there looked around and they said, we don't fit here, but you know what, we here, so we just gonna sit right here and we're gonna establish our own, okay? And you see that throughout many areas. Okay, thank you. So again, the Urban League of Greater Cleveland focuses on the intersection of workforce, entrepreneurship, education, youth development, all things that we've been talking about all morning and in the last presentation. Now, Cleveland is now a very different place than it was 35 or 40 years ago. When I graduated from the Cleveland schools and got a very good education there, people could go to the Ford Motor Plant, people could go to LTV Steel, people could go to college, they could go to the military, they could do lots of things and get good paying jobs to move into the middle class. That is not the case today. We were a Rust Belt city. And a lot of those being able to make steel, depending on the coal that came through our town and so forth, those opportunities no longer exist. So Cleveland and other Rust Belt cities had to actually redesign their economies and develop new opportunities of workforce in order for people to have jobs. But at the same time, what was going on? Globalization. Fortune 500 companies were leaving and not taking their talent just to South Beach, but taking their talent across the pond and all kinds of other places in the world. Because of the information technology that so quickly and easily connects us, it means nothing. Have you tried calling a help desk lately? Okay, you know what I'm saying. Okay, you may get to talk to somebody who can understand, you may not, all right? But that's the issue of globalization. And businesses can contain their cost by getting low-wage workers, and that's just real. So they can get workers from wherever they want to, and if they believe that there is not a skilled workforce ready and available in place, remember what I said about the Great Migration? demand, supply. If I can't find what I want or what I need here, I can go someplace else. Keep that in mind. So, the Urban League, around all these issues, has taken a very serious look at our role in creating a talent pipeline. I sit on a board called, William and I both sit on this board, Global Cleveland. Global Cleveland is focused on the issue of bringing immigrants, highly skilled and highly educated immigrants, to Cleveland. Why? Because Cleveland is experiencing a population decline. When a city experiences a population decline, that means there's less financial resources, okay? And all of those things. So declining population is not a good thing for a city. So Global Cleveland's response is we need to bring highly educated, highly skilled immigrants here. Why? Because number one, they can